They laughed at his suicidal maneuver until it destroyed 9 fighters in a single dive at 22,000 feet. The air is thin enough to starve a fire, yet the cockpit smells of burning oil and stale sweat. It is a solitary confinement made of aluminum and glass, vibrating at 2,000 revolutions per minute. The pilot checks his gauges, not with fear but with the detached scrutiny of an auditor. Oil pressure stable. Cylinder head temperature holding. Below him, the cloud deck looks like a bruised floor of solid slate. Above him, the sun is a blinding white hole in the indigo sky. And dead ahead, 3,000 feet lower, is the enemy formation. They are a disciplined geometry of destruction, a staggered line of heavy fighters moving with the slow, inevitable momentum of a freight train. To anyone else, engaging this formation alone is not just suicide, it is a mathematical impossibility. The conventional doctrine says you climb, you circle, you wait for a wingman. But the man in the cockpit does not believe in doctrine, he believes in vectors. He believes in the absolute, unforgiving truth of kinetic energy. He pushes the stick forward. The nose of his fighter drops and the horizon vanishes, replaced by the terrified green of the earth far below. The engine roars, a sudden pitch change that screams of over-revving. He is not attacking, he is falling. And he is doing it exactly as he calculated on a napkin in a smoke-filled mess hall 3 nights ago, while the rest of the squadron laughed. To understand the madness of what is about to happen, you have to understand the physics of the stall. In 1943, aerial combat was governed by the turn. The pilot who could turn tighter inside his opponent's radius lived, the one who drifted wide died. It was a horizontal war fought in circles, but turning bleeds energy. As every degree of bank increases drag, acting like a brake. The hero of our story, a man named low-ranking but high intelligence, realized that the obsession with the turn was a trap. He was an outsider, a former engineer who looked at a fighter plane and saw a falling object, not a bird. He argued that the only way to defeat a numerically superior force was to stop flying and start plummeting. He called it the energy trap. His peers called it the Cofton corner. They mocked his obsession with weight distribution and his habit of sanding the paint off his leading edges to reduce friction by a fraction of a percent. They didn't understand that he wasn't trying to fly better, he was trying to fall faster. The mess hall that night had been thick with the bravado of men who expected to die. They toasted to luck, to courage, to the erratic favor of the gods. He sat in the corner, sketching force diagrams. He tried to explain it to the squadron leader. He spoke of potential energy converted to kinetic energy, of the square-cube law, of the specific moment when the slipstream becomes hard as concrete against the control surfaces. He explained that if you dive at a specific angle, steep enough to break the sound barrier's warning tremors but shallow enough to maintain control, you become a projectile that no human reflex can track. The squadron leader had laughed, patting him on the shoulder with the condescension of a veteran addressing a child. He told him that war is fought with guts, not slide rules. He told him that if he tried a vertical slash through a bomber formation, the sheer density of defensive fire would shred him before he could pull the trigger. They didn't see the war he saw, they saw knights jousting. He saw a physics problem with a lethal variable. Back in the cockpit, the speedometer needle is trembling past 400 miles per hour. The noise is deafening, a physical pressure pressing against his eardrums. This is the realm of compressibility. The air over the wings is moving so fast it begins to compress, creating shockwaves that lock the controls. A normal pilot would pull back now, terrified of the controls freezing, locking him into a death dive. He pushes harder. He knows the math. He knows that the locking phenomenon is temporary, a barrier that breaks if you have the nerve to push through the turbulence. The enemy formation is rushing up at him at a combined closure rate of 600 miles per hour. They haven't seen him yet. They are looking for dots on the horizon, not a thunderbolt dropping from the sun. He is not targeting one plane, he is targeting the integrity of their formation. The logic of the attack is cruel. When a fighter force is attacked from above, the natural reaction is to pull up and engage. But to pull up is to fight gravity. To pull up is to blade speed. He is counting on their instinct. He wants them to look up. He wants them to raise their noses. Because the moment they pull back on their sticks, they become stationary targets relative to his velocity. He is moving at terminal velocity. They are dragging themselves uphill. It is the difference between a stone dropped from a tower and a man trying to catch it while climbing a ladder. He aligns his sights. The lead fighter fills the reticle. He doesn't fire a burst, he fires a slash. He depresses the trigger for a fraction of a second, letting the stream of high-explosive rounds walk through the enemy fuselage. He doesn't watch it explode. He is already moving to the next target. The G-force hits him as he initiates the micro-corrections needed to shift aim. It feels like a giant hand crushing his chest, forcing the air out of his lungs. His vision grays at the edges, tunnel vision reducing the world to a narrow tube of clarity. This is where the training fails and the physics take over. At this speed, a millimeter of stick movement translates to 100 feet of displacement. He is dancing on the edge of structural failure. The rivets on his wings are straining, the metal groaning under the torture of the dive. If he pulls too hard, the wings snap off. If he doesn't pull hard enough, he buries himself in the ground. He is threading a needle while falling at 500 miles per hour. The first enemy plane disintegrates. It doesn't just catch fire. The kinetic impact of the rounds combined with the structural stress of the sudden evasive maneuver tears the wing off. The formation panics. This is the psychological component of the equation. Chaos is a variable he has accounted for. As the formation breaks, the enemy pilots revert to their training. They bank left and right, trying to turn into the attacker. But he is already gone, flashing past them before the sound of his engine even reaches their cockpits. He has passed through their altitude and is now below them, carrying immense speed. Now comes the second part of the maneuver, the part they said was impossible. The zoom climb. He hauls back on the stick. The blood drains from his head, pooling in his legs. His vision goes black for a second, a total eclipse of consciousness, but his hands keep moving. He is trading all that speed back for altitude. He shoots upward like a rocket, defying gravity with the momentum he stole from the fall. The enemy fighters are scrambling, disorganized, looking down to find him. But he is rising up beneath them, a predator surfacing from the deep. He is in their blind spot, hidden by their own fuselages. He emerges from the gloom below, his speed bleeding off but his position perfect. He is slow now, but they are confused. He triggers a second burst, coring the engine of a trailing fighter. 2 down. The sky is now a swirl of smoke and debris. The disciplined geometry is broken. It is a brawl. But he refuses to brawl. He refuses to turn. He noses over again, initiating a second dive. He is converting altitude to speed, speed to position, position to kills. It is a cycle of energy management that the enemy cannot comprehend. They are fighting a dogfight. He is fighting a vertical pendulum war. He drops again, the engine screaming in protest. The enemy pilots are terrified. They cannot track a target that moves only in the vertical plane. They crane their necks looking for the turn, but there is no turn. There is only the drop and the climb. He targets a cluster of 3 fighters trying to regroup. They are huddled together for safety, a fatal mistake. They present a unified target density. He adjusts his dive angle, steepening it to 60 degrees. The wind roar changes pitch, a high-frequency shriek. He is coming down like a hammer. He anticipates their break. He knows that the pilot on the left will break left, the pilot on the right will break right. He aims for the center, letting the dispersion of his rounds catch the wingmen. It is purely an exercise in probability. He fires. The tracers lace through the sky a web of hot lead. The center plane explodes immediately, its fuel tank rupturing under the hydrostatic shock. The debris field expands instantly, forcing the wingmen to fly through the fireball of their leader. One of them clips a piece of the wreckage, losing a stabilizer. He spirals out of control, a leaf caught in a gale. 4 down, the cockpit is hot now, unbearably so. The heater has malfunctioned, or perhaps it is just the heat of the engine radiating through the firewall. Sweat stings his eyes. His arms ache from the brute force required to move the control surfaces against the slipstream. He is exhausted, but the equation is not balanced yet. There are still targets. There is still energy in the airframe. He pulls up again, the G-forces slamming him back into the seat. His neck muscles strain to keep his head up. He checks the mirror, nothing behind him. They cannot follow him in the vertical. Their engines overheat, their wings stall. He is operating in a flight envelope that exists only on his charts. As he reaches the apex of his second climb, the engine sputters. A momentary fuel starvation caused by the negative GS of the pushover. A lesser pilot would panic, level out, try to restart. He ignores it. He knows the gravity feed will catch up as soon as the nose drops. He forces the nose down, floating for a second in zero gravity, weightless in the midst of violence. The propeller bites the air again. The engine catches with a violent cough and roars back to life. He selects his next victim, a fighter attempting to climb to meet him. It is a brave move. It is a foolish move. The enemy is hanging on its prop, speed decaying, barely moving. To the diving pilot, the enemy is essentially parked in the sky. He lines up the shot. It is execution, plain and simple. He fires from 400 yards, closing to 100 in the blink of an eye. The enemy cockpit shatters, 5 down. The remaining enemy pilots are broken. They have seen 5 of their own destroyed by a ghost that refuses to engage in a fair fight. They dive for the deck, seeking the safety of the ground, hoping to lure him into the thick air where his speed advantage will be negated by drag. This is the smart move, but he has anticipated this too. He knows the terminal velocity of his airframe is higher than theirs. He follows them down. The chase is on. This is no longer about geometry. This is about aerodynamic purity. His sanded wings, his waxed fuselage, his obsession with drag reduction, this is where it pays off. He gains on them. He is closing the distance not with engine power but with efficiency. He picks the laggard, the one whose cowl flaps are open too wide, creating drag. He closes to firing range. The enemy weaves, banking hard left then hard right. He does not follow the weave. He aims for the space where the enemy will be. He cuts the corner, firing a deflection shot across the turn. The bullets intersect the flight path of the enemy plane. It flies into the stream of lead. Smoke pours from the engine. 6 down. The ammunition counters are dropping low. He has to be precise. No more long bursts, short, controlled taps. He is low now, 5,000 feet and dropping. The ground is rushing up, a blur of green and brown. The air is thick, resisting the plane, shaking the airframe with turbulent buffeting. The controls feel heavy, like they are set in concrete. He wrestles the stick. He sees 2 fighters ahead, running for the safety of their anti-aircraft lines. He cannot get them both. Unless he uses the energy of the dive to skip bomb himself across the atmosphere. He levels out, carrying massive speed, skimming the treetops. The sudden change in air pressure creates a condensation cloud around his wings, a ghostly cloak. He comes up behind the pair. They are fast, but he is faster. He is riding the shockwave of his descent. He targets the wingman first, a short burst to the wing root. The wing folds, 7 down. The leader pulls up, trying to loop over him. It is a desperation move. He pulls up with him, using his excess kinetic energy to close the loop tighter. They are canopy to canopy for a split second. He can see the enemy pilot's face, the white mask of terror. He slides back, dropping onto the enemy's tail. He squeezes the trigger. Click. The guns chatter for a second and then fall silent, only two guns firing. He is out of cannon shells, only machine guns left. He has to get closer. He has to be surgical. He closes until he can see the rivets on the enemy's tail. He aims for the pilot. He fires. The canopy shatters. The plane noses over into the trees, 8 down, 1 left, but he is out of energy. The zoom climbs the dives, the drag race. He has spent his kinetic currency. He is low, slow, and his engine is overheating. The temperature gauge is in the red. The last enemy fighter sees this. He turns. The hunter becomes the hunted. The enemy comes around, guns winking. The tracers zip past the cockpit. He hears the thud of bullets hitting his fuselage. The canopy cracks. He ducks instinctively. He has no speed to climb. He has no altitude to dive. He is trapped in the horizontal fight he despises. But he remembers one last variable, the flaps. Combat flaps are designed to increase lift for tighter turns, but they also create massive drag. He is betting his life on the drag. He waits until the enemy is right on his tail, lining up the kill shot. Then he drops the flaps and cuts the throttle. It is like hitting a brick wall. His plane decelerates violently. The enemy, carrying full speed for the kill, overshoots. He flashes past, unable to slow down in time. Suddenly, the enemy is in front. The tables have turned in a fraction of a second, not by speed but by the lack of it. He jams the throttle forward again, retracting the flaps. The engine screams in agony, pushed beyond its limits. He is right on the enemy's tail at point-blank range. He squeezes the trigger. The last of his ammunition, the dregs of the belt, spit out. The tracers walk up the enemy fuselage, stitching a line of holes from tail to engine. Fire blooms. The enemy fighter rolls inverted and smashes into a hillside. 9 down. The silence that follows is heavier than the roar of the engine. He is alone in the sky. The adrenaline crash hits him, his hands shaking so violently he can barely hold the stick. He checks his fuel, vapor. He checks his ammo, empty. He checks his altitude, 300 feet. He turns for home, a battered, smoking ruin of a plane carrying a pilot who just rewrote the textbooks. He doesn't smile. He doesn't cheer. He just recalculates his fuel consumption for the return leg. The math never stops. When he lands, the ground crew has to lift him out of the cockpit. His legs have given out. They look at the plane. It is riddled with holes, the paint scorched, the metal stressed. They look at the gun camera footage later, huddled in a dark room. They watch the impossible geometry of the dives, the brutal efficiency of the climbs. They stop laughing. The mess hall is quiet that night. No one toasts to luck. They look at him sitting in the corner with his slide rule and they realize that they are not flying the same war. He isn't a pilot. He is a physicist who uses a fighter plane as his pen. The footage is grainy, black and white, flickering against the wall of the intelligence office like a silent film from hell. The room is filled with cigarette smoke and the heavy silence of men who are looking at something they cannot explain. The brass are there, generals who learn to fly in biplanes made of canvas and wood, men who believe in the chivalry of the dogfight. They watch the screen. They see the horizon tumble. They see the sudden, violent expansion of enemy aircraft as the shells strike. They count. 1, 2, 3, 4. It goes on. There is no sound on the film, but you can feel the violence in the way the camera shakes, the shudder of the airframe transferred to the celluloid. When the reel flutters to an end, showing the final enemy fighter flipping into the trees, the projector hums in the quiet. A colonel stands up, clears his throat, and asks the question that is on everyone's mind. He asks if the camera is broken. He asks if the film was spliced. Because what they just saw was not combat, it was industrial slaughter. The pilot stands at the back of the room. He is not looking at the screen. He is looking at a chalkboard where he has drawn a series of parabolas. He tries to explain it again. He talks about energy states. He talks about the fact that an airplane is nothing more than a battery storing potential energy in altitude and kinetic energy in speed. He explains that he did not defeat the enemy pilots. He defeated their energy states. He bankrupted them. The generals stare at him. They want to pin a medal on his chest. They want to take photos for the newspapers back home. They want a hero with a white scarf and a winning smile. Instead, they have a technician with oil under his fingernails who talks about war as if it were a plumbing problem. They give him the medal, of course, but they don't invite him to dinner. He scares them. He represents the death of their era. He is the future, cold and fast and indifferent to bravery. News of the 9-kill dive spreads. It becomes a ghost story in the mess halls across the theater. New pilots arrive, fresh-faced boys with silk scarves and dreams of glory. They corner him, asking for the secret. They want to know how to move the stick, how to feather the rudder. He tells them the truth, and they don't listen. He tells them to strip the armor, plating off their seats to save weight. He tells them to spend hours waxing the wings. He tells them to memorize the climb rates of the enemy engines. They shake their heads. They want a magic trick. They go out and try to replicate his dive without the math. They pull the wings off their planes. They black out from G-forces they aren't prepared for. They slam into the ground because they miscalculated the pull-out altitude by 50 feet. The cemetery fills up with imitators. The pilot stops talking. He realizes that you cannot teach instinct, and you certainly cannot teach genius to men who only have courage. The war drags on. The enemy adapts. They stop flying in tight formations. They start flying higher, faster. The technological race accelerates. Piston engines grow larger, monstrous things with 24 cylinders spewing fire and torque. The speeds creep up 450, 480 miles per hour. The physics get harder. The shockwaves on the wings get stronger. The controls stiffen earlier. The pilot is in his element. While others rest, he is in the hangar with the mechanics, redesigning the air intakes. He is obsessed with cooling. He calculates that if he can keep the cylinder head temperature down by 10 degrees, he can run the manifold pressure 5 inches higher. 5 inches of pressure is 20 miles per hour. 20 miles per hour is the difference between a kill and a stalemate. He modifies his plane until it is a Frankenstein monster of performance, ugly and temperamental, but faster than anything in the sky. He is sent on a new type of mission. Free hunt. No escort duties, no patrol lines. Just him and the machine roaming the upper stratosphere looking for the enemy's new weapons. The jets. Rumors have drifted across the lines of planes with no propellers, planes that scream like banshees and move at speeds that defy logic. The generals are terrified. The pilot is fascinated. He wants to see them. He wants to understand their vector. One morning, over the gray industrial sprawl of the enemy heartland, he sees it. A streak of shadow trailing black smoke moving at 550 miles per hour. It is a shark in a pond of minnows. It tears through a formation of bombers untouched by the defensive fire. He does not attack, he observes. He climbs above it, hoarding his altitude, watching the jet turn. He sees the flaw. The jet is fast, but it is sluggish in the turn. Its engines are powerful but slow to throttle up. It is a momentum machine. To catch it, he cannot dive at it. He has to dive to where it will be. He has to anticipate the future position of a darker, faster object. He pushes the nose over. This dive is different. The air is so thick at this speed it feels like he is flying through water. The buffeting shakes the instrument panel so hard the dials become unreadable. He is flying by feel, by the vibration in the seat of his pants. He calculates the intercept. He needs to arrive at a specific point in the sky at the exact millisecond the jet passes through it. He falls like a stone. The jet pilot never sees him. Why would he? He is the king of speed. He is invincible. The propeller plane drops out of the sun, engines screaming in an overspeed that threatens to shatter the pistons. He fires a deflection shot, a long, arcing stream of tracers that seems to miss. But the pilot isn't aiming at the jet, he is laying a trap. The jet flies into the bullets. It is a collision of high-speed metal. The jet engine ingests the rounds. The turbine shatters. The invincible weapon dissolves into a cloud of shrapnel. The pilot pulls out, the G-forces rupturing the capillaries in his eyes, turning his vision red. He has done the impossible again. He has killed the future with the past, but the war ends. The silence returns. The ticker tape parades happen, the speeches are made, the heroes are toasted. The pilot stands at the back of the crowd unnoticed. He has no place in peace. Peace is messy. Peace is political. Peace has no vectors. He resigns his commission the day after the surrender. He disappears into the desert, to the dry lakes where the Air Force is testing the next generation of machines. The Bell X-1, the sound barrier, the place where the math finally becomes the only thing that matters. He becomes a test pilot. It is the only job that fits. There is no enemy to shoot at, only the atmosphere itself. The enemy is the Mach number. The enemy is the drag coefficient. He climbs into cockpits that are more rocket than plane. He is strapped into metal tubes filled with volatile fuel. He pushes the throttle forward not to kill but to know. He is the first to fly the needle-nosed prototypes that look like darts. He is the one who calmly reports the instrument readings while the plane is spinning out of control at 30,000 feet. He is the voice on the radio that says, damping is poor in the yaw axis, while the world spins entirely upside down. Years pass. He grows older, but his mind remains razor sharp. He watches the young pilots come in, the right stuff boys, the astronauts. They are polished, media-friendly, brave, but he sees the same thing he saw in 1943. They are relying on reflex. He sits in the control tower watching the radar traces. He sees the geometry of the flights. He sees the mistakes before they happen. He whispers corrections to himself that no one hears. The end does not come in a crash. There is no fireball. That would be a statistical anomaly for a man who calculates risk so precisely. The end comes in a classroom. He is an old man now teaching advanced aerodynamics at the War College. The room is filled with the best pilots in the world, men who fly supersonic fighters with computers that do the thinking for them. He stands at the chalkboard the same way he did in the intelligence office 40 years ago. He draws a curve. It is the curve of the energy trap. The dive, the maneuver that killed 9 men in 10 minutes. He looks at the class. "Gentlemen," he says, his voice dry as the desert wind. "You have computers that can calculate a firing solution in a microsecond. You have missiles that can turn 90 degrees. You have engines that can push you vertical forever." He taps the chalk on the board. But the sky does not change. Gravity is a constant, drag is a constant, and the pilot who forgets that the air is a fluid and that he is merely a solid object moving through it is a dead man. He puts the chalk down. He looks out the window at the sleek gray jets sitting on the tarmac. They are beautiful. They are deadly. But to him, they are just variables in an equation he solved a long time ago. He walks out of the room, leaving the diagram on the board, a perfect parabola, the shape of a fall. The shape of a rise, the shape of a war won not by blood but by the relentless, unforgiving application of physics. The students stare at the board, silent. They don't laugh, not anymore.